Hey everybody, welcome back to Two Spot Monkeys Live. Here we are, episode number 24. Nice even number. Great, Jim, it's great to see you. How are you today?
Good to see you as well, Tom. I am good. Trying to remember, last week, did I have the black or the dark backdrop behind me? I think I might have. For our whopping 3 or 4 people who watch this on YouTube, took that down because yesterday I was told on a Zoom meeting I had a black shirt on. And I had this, it's a navy blue really backdrop. I was trying to use it for a green screen here with the program that we use to record this. I also use for my live trivia nights that I host on my Facebook page, Asking Nebraskan Trivia on Facebook, cheap plug. But it didn't work out for a green screen. But I was told yesterday while I was wearing my black shirt that I had a floating head was all I looked like I was on the screen. So dropped the backdrop and back to just the painted wall now for now. But other than that, I guess you wanted to know about if I was a floating head at any point this week. I was.
Well, I mean, a floating head, or are we talking heads?
Well, we're a little bit of that too. So, well, it is good to be back and talking wrestling. And hey, there's some stuff to talk about this week. This was, there's some weeks Tom and I, when we do our little kind of pre-show conversation, obviously we catch up on our personal lives, but we also, talk about, make sure we know what we're going to talk about in the show. Some of you may be shocked to learn we actually have a plan when we start doing this, but we do. And some weeks it's a little bit like, okay, we know we're going to hit these 2 or 3 things because we've got a head-to-head or 3 big things or something. And then it's like, what else do you want to put in there? This was not one of those weeks. In fact, we removed a thing or 2 that will kick off to the weeks to come because they're not so paramount. But for those of you who have not seen AEW yet, this week for Winter is Coming, you might want to stop listening now if you don't want to be spoiled. But let's be honest, if you haven't seen it and you're listening to a podcast, that's a poor choice. So that's on you. But we're going to talk a little AEW to start. And let's start with, there obviously are 2 major stories, I think, to come out of Winter is Coming, along with some other, side stories going on as well. But the biggest debut that happened, I'll call it the biggest debut, maybe since John Moxley, probably in AEW, was Sting showing up in AEW. I got to admit, I had to laugh at how much they were pushing, for the first time in 18 years on TNT. I just don't think people care about what channel something is on.
And it's longer than 18 years.
It'd be 19 years.
Right. Like, I was having a hard time. I mean, as someone who wants to get numbers right, and I'm not perfect, when they were doing that, I was doing the math in my head going, 2001 to 2020 is greater than 18 years.
Right. Yes, it is. It truly is. I guess they were saying more than 18. Did they say more than? I don't remember. I'd have to go back and watch.
I think it was the first time in 18 years.
First time in 18 years, which it's the first time in, more than that. So
it's almost 19 and a half, or it is 19 and a half.
Right. I mean, really, that was March that WCW shut down in 2001. We're coming up on, 20 years here in the not too distant future.
I would have preferred they said nearly 20 years. It's been nearly 20 years since the Stinger has been on TNT.
Right. Absolutely. That would have made a lot more sense. But so Sting is in AEW, and from what they sent out right away or shortly thereafter, it's a multi-year contract. So it's not a one-off thing. Sting's going to be in AEW for the foreseeable future in some capacity. Tom, what was your, I told Tom before we started recording this, unfortunately got spoiled for me before I saw it, which is a little bit of a bummer. But Tom, what was your response or your reaction when you saw Sting?
Yeah. So first and foremost, Sting has never been a guy who I've been a huge fan of. I've enjoyed him, but going back to 96, 97, the whole Crow thing, I was always pro WWF. So I wasn't ever a WCW guy. They never won the war and pulled me over. I was always first and foremost WWF. So I enjoy Sting. I think he's a legend without question. Obviously, he's in the Hall of Fame in the WWE. So totally cool and exciting. The placement and the mystique that has me intrigued. I look forward to hearing him talk next week and tell us why he's here and what his motivations are. Where did Team Taz disappear to is the wondering that I have, because they were about to take out Cody and lay the leather to him, and the lights go out and winter came and Sting appeared and Team Taz was nowhere to be found. So, which again, I wouldn't see them as a natural first adversary, perhaps, but maybe so. But they just no explanation there. And again, they should fade into the background when you have someone of the magnitude of Sting show up. But it was interesting how we went to all four of the baby faces, and of course the history with Arn Anderson, and then of course Cody and Sting don't have a direct history, but the link is Dusty Rhodes. So that was interesting. Yeah, that's how it really landed with me. It was super cool, and I loved the snow that was in the air and how you could see it condensating on the camera lens.
I thought it was Glacier. I was sure it was Glacier.
Yeah, so that's how it landed with me. So again, you said it was spoiled, but then you've gone back and you've seen it play out.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So how did it land with you?
Yeah. So spoiled that Sting arrived. I didn't necessarily. Well, I think the picture I saw, I was pretty sure I saw Cody in it, so I knew it was probably around that. So the minute things went dark, I went, "Oh yeah, okay, here it is." So my first thought was, good Lord, everybody works with Cody when they come in. Like, we're going to do Shaq and Cody, although maybe not. I don't know. That seems to have kind of faded. And Jade had that one backstage thing where they jumped.
Red Velvet,
yeah. And then now we haven't seen her. And again, from what I've said on the show before, they can let that go. That's okay with me. We can pretend that never happened. I'm okay with that. Then Sting comes in. He's with Cody. At least he didn't drop Cody, because for a while there at the beginning of AEW, early on in AEW, it was kind of Cody to me was very much the Sting of AEW at that point, in that everybody who was friends with Cody turned on him. And Sting kind of had that, especially in his Surfer Sting days, before the Crow character. If you tagged with Sting, you probably beat him up at some point. So Cody kind of had that feel for me for a while. I've liked Sting. I loved him in his Surfer Sting days, back when he was the hottest thing going. Clash of the Champions 1, Ric Flair, all of that. The Crow character I liked, and I'm going to talk out both sides of my mouth here, but I like long-term storytelling. But that thing took a year, and holy smokes. And then, unfortunately, I think I would have been okay with the year, but unfortunately, the payoff sucked because of the whole botched count and Bret Hart involvement, all of that. They went way too gaga with that in the end. So it kind of, I don't want to say it ruined Sting for me or spoiled Sting for me, but that didn't help. I mean, they had this year-long build. It should have been this epic battle, and unfortunately it got screwed up. That being said, I do think it's a little bit interesting that many, I'm going to make generalizations here, many AEW fans harp on WWE for bringing in too many old guys, Brock, Triple H, Stone Cold, all that. I'm just saying. And now it's Sting, and he's here. I think it'll be interesting to see. From what I've read, he's not going to be doing a lot of bumping, so he's not going to be a full-time in-ring worker, probably maybe not even working any matches. You have to think he's going to drop somebody with a Stinger death drop, Scorpion death drop. There we go. I knew as I was saying that wasn't right. He's probably going to hit somebody with that bat at some point. So I think it'll be interesting. I hope they don't go the, he's the GM or the enforcer route or anything. AEW has steered away from that, and I've really liked that they've steered away from that. WWE even has steered away from that in the last number of years. Adam Pearce is kind of the representative of management, but he's not the GM. He's not the one in charge, and he's made that very clear. And anytime you call your world champion McInfart, you shouldn't be in charge of anything. But For Sting, I'm interested to see where it goes. I'm in the same boat as you. I'm interested to hear him talk next week, to see what direction they give his character. It almost seems he's going to have to be some sort of an enforcer, or the moral compass of AEW or something along those lines, because if he's not going to be working in the ring full time, which from all signs that we've seen in the past, that's not in the cards for him because of his neck injury. What's he going to do? I don't think is he going to be a manager? That character doesn't work as a manager for me. I did like that they had him kind of look at both sides of Darby Allin's face. I think there are some really interesting stories you could tell with Darby Allin and Sting. And I like if we're using older veteran guys to help bring up young talent. That's why I like Team Taz. I think Taz is a mouthpiece for guys like Brian Cage, Ricky Starks, who doesn't necessarily need the mouthpiece. And Powerhouse Hobbs, terrible name change, by the way, right out of WWE. I think that really works well. I like Jake Roberts with Lance Archer. I'm okay with Arn, with the Nightmare Family. I think everybody thought there was going to be a turn there really early on, and it never has happened so far. So if Sting somehow is connected with Darby Allin in some way, not as a manager, but in some way, I think that could be interesting. So I'm definitely willing to see where it goes. I thought it was the visual, absolutely. The production of it was very, very cool. I was glad that Winter is Coming had some meaning more than just the name of the show. They pushed it so hard, kind of like we joked last week, I think, about the SummerSlam tagline, "You'll never see it coming." When you push the tagline or the name of the show so hard like that, it seems like there's got to be something. So I'm glad they went the Winter aspect with his entrance so that there was some tie into that. I think it's going to be interesting to see. Do I think this moves the needle long-term for AEW? I don't necessarily. They certainly got a really nice boost, though. They had almost 1 million viewers on Wednesday night, which is the first time in a little while that they've been that high. And I think I saw that that 18 to 35 or 18 to 40, whatever it is, demo that Chris Jericho always talks about, why he's the demo god and blah, blah, blah. I think I saw that they may have even tied Raw, which would be huge for them, even for 1 week. So kudos to AEW for doing something cool and for keeping it a surprise. To the best of my knowledge, this did not leak out beforehand. I never saw anything that said, huge spoiler for AEW tonight. So kudos to them for keeping it a surprise and leaving us wanting more. I think that's the thing. You and I both said we want to hear what Sting has to say. And that's the mark of a good debut, of not just going, oh, okay, they're here now, but going, oh, where's that going? So kudos to AEW on that.
Yeah, and to your comment, I just wonder about the business decision here. Again, if Sting's not going to be in the ring, what value are you paying him to bring to you? You're already winning Wednesdays. You've already been winning Wednesdays. But to your comment, if they are matching Raw numbers on a different night and outperforming the ratings, that's worth paying someone like Sting. But what else? And I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't be so inquisitive, but what's the end game or what's the end goal?
Yeah, and I think that'll be interesting to watch out. Sting action figures tend to sell well, so I would expect about a year from now we'll get a Jazzware Sting. They had to pull the last Sting that WWE was going to do because his contract ran up, and now we know that figure is probably not going to see the light of day for quite some time, unless he someday goes back to WWE, which, I don't know, everybody seems to go back at some point, right? So I did see that he had the highest selling shirt in PWT's history, Pro Wrestling Tees history, within 24 hours. So people are excited about it. That's for certain. I did think it was interesting that on that shirt he was wearing, it was Sting, but I mean, you had AEW very prominently right above Sting. I'm like, yeah, somebody is branding, which kudos to them. They should take advantage. I mean, you bring a guy like Sting in to move a needle. So kudos to you. Get your logo front and center. Make sure everybody knows Sting is with AEW if they're excited about Sting. Anything else on Stinger? I do agree with you. Team Taz kind of melting into the snow was a little bit strange, but a face-off between Taz and Sting, although Sting is about 3 feet taller than him, would be kind of cool. That's a matchup we never saw, and I don't know that they've ever had any interaction together.
No, and from a pure like fantasy booking standpoint, you go 1997 dream match, Taz versus Sting.
Oh man, I mean, right. So just the face-off of that, I suppose they both would have been an Impact for a stretch there. Well, but Taz was mainly a commentator at that point. I think Sting was gone before Aces and Eights, but I'm getting way into Impact history that it'll be a nice segue here. I'm in and out on Impact over the years, depending kind of on cable systems and where they've been, where they've aired, and their product, frankly, at times, which maybe is a good segue into our next topic, which is we have a new AEW World Champion, Kenny Omega. You were correct. I was wrong. Thank God we didn't count that in the head-to-head.
Can we go back and change that?
No. Up lead. Stop pouring it on. There's a mercy rule at some point here. But Kenny Omega does win the world title, and with help, though, from Don Callis. And Don Callis then, as they ran out of the arena, said, tune in on Tuesday night, and we'll explain everything. And when Alex Marvez said Dynamite's on Wednesday, Callis, who of course is a vice president with Impact Wrestling, which they've made clear every time Callis has appeared. He's been on a couple of times. I know he was on Dark at least once, and he commentated on Kenny Omega's match at Full Gear. They've mentioned his connection with Impact Wrestling, and he said, tune into Impact on Tuesday night, and Kenny and I will explain everything. Okay. So Impact Wrestling and AEW are working together. I can't say I saw this coming. Tom, what did you think when you heard that a little while ago here?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack.
Yeah, we can go piece by piece. We got time. So
right. So that's very interesting. And transitioning from Sting's debut and what does the business impact of that perhaps have or mean, or what is the goal? I think you can apply that same question here. AEW clearly is the emerging or the emergent pro wrestling promotion in North America. You don't need to hitch your trailer or let someone else hitch their trailer to you, in my opinion. However, that's happening here. And again, what's the end game? What's the rub? I think it's more of a rub for Impact, without a doubt. And to your comment about Don Callis' appearance, every time I see him, I love him. I loved him when he was a commentator for New Japan World and New Japan Pro Wrestling. And we didn't, in our delayed summary of our thoughts about Full Gear, that was also one of the bright spots. Having him be there on commentary was fun for me, was enjoyable for me. So seeing him here, I didn't think anywhere near that this would be the development that we would get. I don't get access, which is where Impact airs on my local cable, but I'm very intrigued to hear what happens on Tuesday, read what happens on Tuesday. I don't really follow Impact as a promotion. I'm aware of the talents that are there, and through our fantasy wrestling league, I kind of see the results, but it's not a focal point, when I kind of rank where I prioritize what wrestling I'm seeking out. This probably changes that. So I'm going to park there because I want to hear what you have to say, but I do want to unpack the title match too. So.
Yeah, I also don't get access. I use Hulu Live, and they don't have access on their package, but I will be trying to find something. I'm curious to see, is this a long-term, or how long-term is this? I agree with you. AEW doesn't need to hitch themselves. They've worked with the NWA, obviously, quite extensively, actually, in the last number of months and really throughout their history. We've heard of them, they've loaned guys out to indie shows at some level. when that was still a thing before the pandemic. But they've also been very protective of some of their guys. I think about John Moxley. He can't work New Japan shows that are held in the United States. Tony Khan has also said John Moxley is not going to be working Wrestle Kingdom. So obviously there's some things there.
But was that a red herring? We'll find out. We'll find out.
Will be. Right. Maybe it was he's the world champ. He's not leaving to go to Wrestle Kingdom. Maybe. Now, the connection that people have wanted to see since the formation of AEW was AEW and New Japan working together because of the connection of the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega and Cody and, on and on and on. That's the connection I think people are wanting. So my fear is that this looks like a consolation prize. Or a participation trophy almost. Impact doesn't have the luster. Unfortunately, I think Impact gets a little bit of a bad rap too. They've had some crap years. Let's not hide that fact. Impact now, though, from all accounts from those who do watch it more regularly, has had some pretty good matches. Now they do intersperse it with, they had, this saga for a couple of weeks of who shot Johnny Bravo. At his and Rosemary's wedding. It was complete gaga, craziness. They had a wrestler's house thing that was stupidity. I don't think AEW fans have a leg to stand on there, though. When you watch the steak dinner, when you watch the Vegas skits, when you watch Being the Elite. Obviously, the AEW guys like that style of gaga, too, so there probably is some connection there. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see. Is this kind of a one-off or is it a short-term thing? Is Callis going to come in, more full-time in AEW? How does that all work out? Kenny Omega to me isn't a guy who needs a manager because I think Kenny's a good talker. But as arrogant as he is, having a manager I could see that working. What does this mean for Kenny and the Bucks? Where's that? Because the Bucks almost seem to be going kind of more babyface-ish after a little bit of a more heelish run. I don't know. That's another story for another day. I am intrigued by this. It made me want to see Impact next week to see where this is going. What does it mean? How much of a crossover do we get? Do we get every week? Is there somebody from AEW on Impact and Impact on AEW? Impact isn't shot live, so I'm also curious to see how does that work out. I also haven't seen a lot of Impact spoilers because they do kind of closed set tapings like everybody else is right now. So maybe Kenny Omega was at the last Impact taping, so we just never heard about it. Maybe it's a promo that's shot, not in the ring. It'll be interesting to see. Does this get the Good Brothers? There's been a lot of talk. People thought maybe they were going to go to AEW. Do we get the Good Brothers to come in for a match or two? Do we get, the North? I think I read Ethan Page's contract's coming up at the end of the year. And he is quarantining currently because he was exposed to someone with COVID at Impact. I think there's some interesting things that could come from this. And it'll just be interesting to see how it goes. Also, how is Impact treated through this? Are they the underdog who's never going to win anything? Or are they treated as an equal? And if so, what does that do for Impact moving forward? Impact has every reason to do this crossover. And AEW, I'm not sure they do, but they definitely have the power and the control in any sort of negotiation, I would think. About this, but the first step being that their world champion, their brand new world champion, Kenny Omega, is going to appear on Impact on Tuesday. That's pretty big. I am intrigued by this.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what were your thoughts on the match? Like, I really want to unpack this, and we might not spend a lot of time because I think it may be an easy conversation, but just intrigued because, of course, the finish and the fallout was another layer after a really strong match.
Yeah, I agree. It was a very strong match between the two. Doesn't shock me. They've had a good match before. They both are very good in-ring workers. For as much as Moxley, they play up the violence and the weapons and all that kind of stuff. He's a good in-ring worker too. He's not Daniel Bryan. He's not Kenny Omega. Style-wise, I don't mean that to sound ranking-wise. Style-wise, he's got his own style, but I think he's very good in the ring. And Kenny Omega, when Kenny Omega's on, Kenny Omega's one of the best in the world. We all know that. We've all been wanting to see it in AEW, and I think we came closer to seeing that on Wednesday night than we have in quite some time in AEW. I loved the match. The finish for me, up until the whole tune into Impact comment, I was a little bit like, oh, that's how you finish the match. A mic shot and then the one-winged angel, which nobody kicks out of. Okay, fine. Spoiler alert, Hangman Page will be the first person to kick out of the one-winged angel. That's my belief. I don't know if that's really a spoiler. Paul Heyman would tell you it is. They've been saying that so often that nobody's ever kicked out of it, that at some point that's a big storyline point. And I'm glad they didn't use it on Jon Moxley. He doesn't need it. So in that way, I'm glad. But so up until I realized Callis had thrown the mic in, and I'm like, oh, okay, so they're going, apparently Don Callis is going to be with Omega. I certainly didn't see the Tune In Tuesday night. The minute he said Tune In Tuesday night, I went, like, did he just say Tuesday? So that was interesting to me. Given that it was used to set that up, I'm a little more okay with the finish than I was as it was happening, if that makes sense.
That's interesting. Let me try to articulate this well. I loved the precedent that was set, the boundary that was established about the personal connection between Kenny Omega and Don Callis. That made it so that way when Omega hurt his eye on that paradigm shift on the floor, him responding in that way didn't feel out of touch. When Omega came up and got thrown back in the ring, it really wasn't clear for at least another minute or so of the eye injury. And I'm not even sure what type of eye injury it is. I expected him to come up bleeding or something else.
I thought he was going to be busted open too. And yeah.
It appeared to me like, I don't know, an eyelid tear, maybe. It wasn't discernible enough visually for me to think it was that big of a deal. Like, it didn't seem to impact Omega's vision. Like,
he didn't come holding his face or his eye or anything.
Right. So from an emotional standpoint, invested in the match, I didn't. The way they were presenting it on TV and the way I was interpreting it, watching it, didn't mesh. But then you had Callis responding in a different way. So it's almost like you had to maybe be there or feel it differently. The emotion wasn't conveying through TV that way. All of that being said, it all appears to be a ruse. So, like, even though Omega did appear to have something with his right eye after the match was done, it didn't seem like that was ever putting him in jeopardy of losing the match. So, him going full heel by using the weapon, the microphone, to mash Mox and again, as if he even needed that, because once that damage was done and Mox was busted open, he went and nailed, half a dozen V triggers almost. So he put him in the ground, for lack of a better term. It just was the vehicle to get there. And again, as you unpack it and see that they're in cahoots after the fact, and this is leading somewhere else. Just an interesting way that it played out. Again, very, very good quality match. When I thought Omega was winning the belt, when we talked about this a week ago, I didn't see it falling out or happening in this way. I don't know where I'm at on if I thought Omega was still on track to being heel. I think I was, but I wasn't so sure with the dynamic between he and Page. Not that he and Page have a dynamic, but which of the two was going to end up going heel.
I feel like that changed at one point, and it may have been I think it was a conscious change myself. I think originally Page was going heel, and honestly, I think the reaction that Page continues to get from whatever crowd they're able to get, I think they pivoted personally and went to Omega going heel, which I'm fine with. Now they're kind of teasing Page a little bit because he seems to be hanging out with the Dark Order. Although are the Dark Order really heels without Brody Lee, or are they kind of just comical, background? I don't know. That's again another story for another day. The one thing I will say is, why does a mic bust somebody open like that? Like, that just doesn't, a mic shot busting somebody open anytime that's ever been done in wrestling. I'm like, I don't know, a little bit weak sauce. If you're going to bust something, a better way to do it.
He pretty clearly him too with like the foam end of it. Not that
Right.
There's not something hard underneath that, but like if it's got a foam covering and it still does that damage, wow.
Right. There's apparently a knife underneath that microphone cover. So that was a little bit weak. I think I will say too, and I meant to say this earlier, the setup for the mic shot to me was a little wonky. Like, why did Don Callis grab a mic? We can now say, oh, it was so that he could throw it to Kenny Omega. But the whole point of him having, like, I was literally watching it going, why does he have a mic? Why did he have a mic?
Telling the whole crowd, not just right. Paul Turner, that he's hurt. He's hurt. Yeah.
And he never actually even brought it up here. It stayed down around his belly. He's hurt. He's hurt. And I'm like, why? Can the ref not hear you? Like, is Paul Turner half deaf? I don't know what's going on here. By the way, kudos to Paul Turner. I'm really excited that he got to ref that match. I would have assumed Aubrey Edwards or even Mike Chioda, who they bring in from time to time, would have had that world title match. So cool moment for Paul Turner to be able to ref that match. You and I both have met Paul, I think, at different times throughout our Ring of Honor days. I've never talked to him real long or anything, said hello to him, but from small athletic buildings and things in Ring of Honor to crowning Kenny Omega as the AEW champion over Jon Moxley is pretty cool moment, I would think, for Paul Turner. So good for him.
Yeah, I agree. So here's the thing. I'm going to put you on the spot again. Obviously, we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what's going to happen with Impact and AEW. And obviously, there's a lot between now and Revolution in February. And I wouldn't expect that we don't see Kenny Omega defend until then. But knowing what you know at this moment in time, who do you see as the challenger for Omega? Should he still be champion in February?
Jon Moxley.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
I debated for a moment Adam Page, but I actually think you build to that at like Double or Nothing, since that's kind of your big show, their anniversary show and all of that. I think that's probably Double or Nothing. But yeah, Jon Moxley, I think, makes sense at Revolution.
And with the history they have, and now with this added element of violence and the breaking of the gentleman's agreement, we haven't talked about that at all, but there was apparently a gentleman's agreement between the two.
Really only on Omega's side. Moxley told him to stuff it.
Right. But Omega was the one that broke it then, right? So Mox is going to have again, I don't know if rematch clauses still exist. I kind of think they do. That's my old school wrestling mentality. I think in WWE they don't exist, but I digress. So there's a reason that he deserves a rematch, and then B, there's emotion behind it now.
Right. Well, and whether rematch clauses exist or not, I think he's got a valid argument because of the mic shot. Because of that piece, he got screwed. So yeah, I think that's where you build. But I think he probably has to go through some sort of hoops to get there, which is part of then what you can build TV with between now and February to get him there. I don't know what those hoops might be. Maybe Jon Moxley has to go and beat the Impact World Champion, Rich Swann, or something. I don't know. I'm just kind of, that'd be interesting. Or Swann comes to AEW and Moxley has to fight him. I don't know. Now, if I was Impact, I'd be very careful about that because you don't want your world champion losing to, a guy who's not even the champion AEW anymore. But again, who has the power in that dynamic? I don't think it's Impact. And who would have thought Rich Swann is a world champion? That's a whole different topic for another day. Good for him. Well, anything else on AEW in general? I will say totally different story from AEW, or this is an AEW thing. I'm intrigued. There's something about Abaddon that I have liked since day one with her character. her walkout looks very movie-esque, the way she holds her hands as she crawls. I mean, she's got that zombie thing down. And the fact that Sheeta is playing a little afraid is interesting. I wouldn't have expected that. And I would almost expect that more from a heel champion than kind of in the Cameron Grimes, Dexter Lumis, which we'll get into here in a little bit, vein. So I thought that was interesting. I don't know. Abaddon as AEW Women's Champion? Maybe.
Yeah, my other thing that I'll comment on from Wednesday was just the Dynamite Diamond Battle Royal. And I think that was, we talked about, I think a little bit last week and maybe previous too, just again, having so many guys on the roster. But I think that was a good place to like bring some stories together and continue some storytelling. And from that, you can not just the match that's going to be for the ring next week, which is going to be interesting because does MJF go back to back or does Orange Cassidy get it? That's a big wondering.
And if Orange gets it, does he care?
Right.
Because, I think there's some fun story you could tell there with that.
Yeah. But I think you can use elements of how that match played out and issues that have been simmering and or building and use that to prop up is the wrong term, but it's what I'm going to come up with. Prop up your TV for the next month plus.
I thought they made Miro look 100 times better than they have any point in his run. Tony Khan said Miro's going to be huge for us. And my first thought when I heard that was, well, you haven't shown it yet. And I'm not saying you had to bring him in on top of the card. Tony Khan, actually, I did read, said the way that he was treated in WWE, you can't bring him in at the top of the card right away. You've got to build him a little bit. And that's a fair assessment because one of the things that Impact gets nailed for is you bring in, Rich Swann. Let's be honest here. Rich Swann was a cruiserweight champion in WWE. When you bring him in and put him on top, some people are like, Rich Swann's your world champion. Eric Young's your world champion like 3 weeks after he comes in. Now, Eric Young had history in Impact, so you can play off of that. But so I think there is some smartness to that. I just think they need to get on with it and start building him a little bit. And I thought the Battle Royal did a really nice job of that. We'll see where it goes. And I agree with you. I'm interested to see the MJF Orange Cassidy match. That's the AEW announcing 3 or 4 or 5 matches for the next week's show towards the end of each episode. I really like because it makes me go, oh, that's right. I want to see how that goes, how that match happens. The bunkhouse match they had a couple of weeks back with Dustin Rhodes and QT against Butcher and the Blade. If they just would have thrown that match out there, I'd have been like, oh, that's interesting. But because they announced it the week before and Dustin Rhodes cut a pretty darn good promo, frankly. And hey, there's some bunkhouse history in the Rhodes family. It made it something I wanted to see the next week. And I think AEW does a really nice job of that most weeks.
Do you know if they record that episode the same night, or is that would they be recording that on a Thursday?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Yeah, that I'm not sure. Next week is a recorded episode. It looks like they're doing every other week right now. Probably not a bad idea. It was a little cold there. Well, okay. I say a little cold, and Jim Ross said it was 40, and I thought, stick it, big guy. We live in the Midwest. 40 is, we can still find our golf ball. But a little cold to be at an outdoor wrestling event. A little different if it's a football game or that sort of thing. So, yeah, I don't know if they record those on Wednesday or Thursday. Part of me thinks it might be Thursday just because it would get late.
That was my thought too. And then when you add on whenever they're taping dark, it just seems like that could be a very long
Especially
night.
since they've been taping 9,000 matches a week for dark. Khan actually said, I did read that too. He's starting to think he needs to split dark into 2 shows. One of which is more developmental and one of which has, more of the name talent that maybe didn't get on Dynamite that week. That might be wise because 3 hours of dark is, I'd be curious. I should go to YouTube and look at how many views they're getting. They're probably getting a ton because there's some people that'll watch it, but I can't give 3 hours to something that I absolutely know will not move any storylines forward other than Peter Avalon versus Brandon Cutler, which, I don't care. Now I say that, and we both watch Raw, So that could be another story for another day.
The tides might be changing there, Jim.
Right. Because there sometimes isn't a whole lot of storyline movement on Raw either in 3 hours. All right. Well, let's move into NXT. There is Ring of Honor stuff we could talk. We're going to kick that to next week. There's Retribution stuff we could talk. We're going to kick that to next week. NXT has Takeover War Games coming up this weekend on Sunday night. I have to keep reminding myself of that. I'm so conditioned to takeovers being on Saturdays that when they throw these Sunday ones in, I'm liable to turn the TV on Saturday night and try to figure out why War Games isn't on. But hopefully I'll get this right and remember that it's on Sunday. Sunday, it's got 5 matches announced so far, and I would assume nothing else will get added at this point. 5 is kind of takeovers limit usually anyways. And when you have 2 War Games matches that are going to take pretty good chunks of time, I can't see them adding anything else. And right now I don't know that they need to either. I think they've got a really nice 5-match card that envelops a lot of the storylines that they are pushing right now on NXT. I don't have my sheet up. Tom, do you have our records? I know we talked about them last week, but
yes, yep.
So and take your victory lap here again and tell everybody how you're kicking my tail.
Entering Sunday, the current head-to-head standings are Tom 41-10, Jim 36-15. So 5-match difference. We're going to have completely opposite picks today for you to have a chance to tie. I can't foresee that being the case. And of course, we're doing this live. So I don't know what you've picked. You don't know what you've picked. I don't know what I've picked. That was actually a bad statement, but also funny because you probably,
probably true.
We're doing this in real time. So yeah. And because you're working from underneath, you get to have the first pick. So
actually, my suggestion was going to be, why don't you make the first pick for each match, and I'll just say the other guy.
That might not work in your favor. With the way
I
I've
might
been
go 10 down then after that. Yeah, okay. So that seems fair, and I don't expect that I'm going to catch you. If I can put a small dent in your lead this weekend, that would be nice, as we do still have Final Battle and TLC to go. Am I forgetting anything else? I think that's it.
That is it.
So Final Battle, which right now Final Battle is sitting at like 8 matches. So there's some chance there, and who knows, TLC certainly has at least a couple of matches. Well, one that's been officially made, and some others that seem fairly obvious after the last week or two. So we'll see how many matches TLC has. But I got some work to do over 3 weeks, over the next few weeks, 3 shows. Yeah, that is true. So let's start off with the match that was just added this last Wednesday. Timothy Thatcher versus Tommaso Ciampa. First of all, I didn't like it at first, but now I have started to like the Thatch Can live sessions, whatever you want to call them. Part of what I like, and this is such a small thing, is that Timothy Thatcher doesn't have a mic, and that he's just talking into the camera, and they've got a boom mic or whatever picking him up, or however they're doing that. It's just different because it's in the ring, and we're conditioned to, if you're in the ring and you're cutting a promo, you have a mic. And so it's different, and it looks a little different. They light it a little bit different. So kudos to them for that. They had August Gray, the former Anthony Green, who was his student for a little while, and now August Gray kind of, had his match with Thatcher and got sick of him. And now is on 205 and doing the cruiserweight thing. Coincidentally, before I go further into this match, I started looking at some of the Evolve cards that are on the WWE Network, and in the descriptions, they've changed their names to their WWE names. So it says so-and-so battles August Gray, or so-and-so battles Dabba-Kato. Now, I would have to think the commentary, I have not watched them on the network, I think the commentary would still be Lenny Leonard. So your description says Dabba-Kato, and then he's going to call him Babatunde when he comes out. I don't know, just stupid. Something I happened to notice flipping through the network the other day and thought, oh, that's interesting. Anyways, that's not either one of these guys. Russ Taylor, though, who had appeared in the Ring of Honor Pure title tournament, was the student this week, and he has signed with NXT. So he is in WWE now. And perhaps I kind of think, before I get into this match, they might do something with him right away, because I don't know if you caught it. You probably did, Tom. You're nodding, so you did. When Timothy Thatcher was talking to Mackenzie Mitchell in the back afterwards and laid this match out, Malcolm Bivens, the former Stokely Hathaway, who we have not seen since Indus Sher went the way of Team Taz. I don't know. They disappeared into the snow somewhere. Well, okay. No. Indus Sher, one of them decided to take a picture of Keith Lee with the NXT title when it was pre-taped and put it out on Instagram. So that's where Indus Sher went. They went bye-bye. They went buried. But poor Malcolm Bivens hasn't had anything to do since then. But he walked in the back, very much in the background. You see him walk up and hand Russ Taylor his card, which I thought was interesting and made me think, oh, they might do something with Russ kind of quickly here, which is interesting when Russ Taylor is in a class of recruits that also includes Dez and Wentz, the Radicals, and Alex Zane, who I would think those three would end up on TV before Russ Taylor, but maybe not. Well, definitely not. Russ Taylor made TV. So,
and side note, completely out of the NXT scope, but with the Radicals signing, I think that means that the PWG tag titles are vacated. And then granted, I don't think PWG has happened in 2020. And with things that the pandemic and response in California, who knows when PWG returns. But if nothing else, the PWG fan in me hopes that the first show back would be the DDT4 tournament to crown new tag champs. If indeed, I'm pretty sure the Radicals are the champs or were the champs. But it is what it is.
Right. Yeah, and that'll be interesting. And Trey Miguel, the Radicals are the champions, by the way. You are correct. Trey Miguel has not signed at this point, so I think it'll be interesting to see whether he's coming into NXT and just, there was some reason why he didn't end up with them right away, or is Trey going to go to AEW? Is Trey going to go to Ring of Honor? Is Trey going to end up back in Impact? What's going to happen with Trey Miguel, who seemed to be more the breakout of the three. So I think that'll be interesting to see. But anyways, that neither being here nor there, we got a little sidetracked. Welcome to Two Spot Monkeys. We do that. Tommaso Ciampa and Timothy Thatcher, they built this match nicely. Ciampa said he wanted to fight a couple of weeks back. Thatcher kind of, very, very cowardly, almost heelish, but yet not total coward either. Kind of said, I don't want any trouble. I'm good. And then, of course, this week said, I don't want any trouble, and then attacked Ciampa and choked him out beautifully in pretty quick fashion. I could see this match going either way, to be perfectly honest, because it does seem like they like Timothy Thatcher and they're going to do some stuff with him. But the fact that he choked out Ciampa on the go home, there's always kind of that unwritten wrestling rule, and it doesn't always get followed, so it screws me half the time on these picks. But there's that kind of unwritten rule: whoever gets laid out, the night before or the week before, usually gets their comeuppance at the pay-per-view. I think Ciampa wants this fight because he sees something in Thatcher, and I think that's where this story goes: is that Ciampa ends up winning, but in the end, Thatcher earns Ciampa's respect. And I don't know if they become a tag team, if they become allies, or if they don't, and it just is a fist bump and hey, you're a tough SOB. But I think Tommaso Ciampa wins this match. But I expect it to be a good match and a war. They're going to beat the crap out of each other. And I think it'll be fun to watch.
Yeah, I agree that I am looking forward to the match. I think it's going to be entertaining and fun to watch and high quality, and I think that they'll get time. Unfortunately, Jim, I hate to tell you that I agree with the pick, so I'm also picking Ciampa, and it's for a lot of the same reasons that you offered. Again, I think that choke out, again, wrestling booking 101, or as you and I probably have a feeling or akin to how we perceive it to be, is that means the babyface needs to get his comeuppance. That being said, though, is Tommaso Ciampa even a babyface? Because when I look back at the last couple of months and how Tommaso Ciampa returned after the One Last Beat match, he's got a really weird story. And I don't know why, and I don't know how, and we may never know why or how. There may be a number of reasons, maybe not related to the pandemic, maybe related to the pandemic, who knows? But here we are, and this is the space that we're in. It's so weird. I was trying to think of an analogy over the last week because I think I voiced, the challenge that I'm having with NXT as a product. And I hope this show helps us break away from that. And takeovers typically do. Like when they had the last one, and it was such a high quality event, and arguably one of the top 5 matches of the year with Finn and O'Reilly. It's like a restaurant where you know you're going to go and get really good food, but the menu has so many options, you struggle with which thing to choose. And that's probably not the best analogy, but I feel like that's what we have with NXT. There are just so many talents there. I mean, you could easily have an 8-match show here for TakeOver and add guys like Kushida, perhaps the Velveteen Dream, Swerve Scott, Grizzled Young Vets just came back. Super high on them. Would love to see them. Hated the way that the match went down on Wednesday. And of all teams that you want to elevate, no disrespect because they're good, but they're not my cup of tea. Everrise. Huh? I digress. So I just wanted to park and make that, and maybe it comes up down the road, and maybe it comes up when we do 3 big things next week. But I'll leave that in the parking lot, and I'll say yes, I agree. I think Ciampa gets the win. I don't know that I necessarily see the potential respect or connection for Ciampa and Thatcher after the fact, but that would be an interesting development if that's the way they go.
Yeah, I think it'll be fun. This would be the one place that I could see, unless we see a Finn Balor promo or something on this show. It seems from tweets that Karrion Kross may be getting close to returning. There's been a lot of TikTok. Triple H even mentioned it in the conference call yesterday. Somebody asked him, and he said, as Karrion Kross says, TikTok, keep your eyes open, which makes me think it's coming soon-ish. Now, you could save it for an NXT on a Wednesday night. That would make sense, too.
Didn't he win the belt in August? Wasn't that the takeover?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, so 4 months. What was it? Torn
shoulder, yeah.
So is that a 4 to 6 month injury generally?
I think so.
Okay, look at us. We're both medical professionals. We should
be on the front end, I think, of the and I mean the guy was in phenomenal shape. So
yeah,
be on the front end of that. I think he won the NXT title and then of course had to vacate it. So and he won it from Keith Lee, who's now not in NXT anymore. So I think you can bring him in and do whatever you want with him now. There's no ready-made story for him. I could see Ciampa and Kross going back down that road. I don't know. It's a thought. I don't necessarily see him, getting involved in War Games. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Nor the North American title, and certainly not this next match, which is the strap match. I joked with Tom before we hit record that this is the feud that never ends. Just goes on and on, my friends.
Yes, and before we get in, before I make my pick here, yes. I just want to, because he may come up as we talk, he may not as well. But just, again, the absence of Finn Balor. Again, he returned 2 weeks ago. He wasn't on this past Wednesday's show. There's maybe some stuff happening there with McAfee's crew. So maybe maybe War Games is where he gets involved. I haven't thought that through or committed my mindset to that yet. But I think you could easily, unless he's not 100% healthy, found a way to get Finn Balor on this takeover. And I'm a little disappointed that he's not.
And maybe because of those little teases with McAfee's crew, does somebody from Undisputed Era get taken out maybe? And he takes the Kevin Owens spot from last year. I don't know. It's a thought. I agree. I expect that we'll see him in some way, even if it's just a promo, even if it's a promo that's not in the ring. It might be a promo like his one 2 weeks ago, where they say, and he'll be returned to action on Wednesday in NXT or something like that. You have to talk about him at some point. He's the champ after all. And he hasn't worked in quite a while because of the injury. You've chosen to leave the belt on him. Okay, but you got to promo him a little bit. The belt needs to mean something. So, yeah, I agree. I definitely don't see him getting involved in this match, though, Tom. What do you see going on with that match between Cameron Grimes and Dexter Lumis?
So, for sure, the feud that never ends. And to your comment about Tim Thatcher in the first match and how I think there's a lot of people in NXT who are behind him. I think the same is said for Cameron Grimes. I think, again, he's a guy who's it seemed like there was a couple starts and stops. And again, who knows why the ebbs and flows happened with him in the way he was presented and how he was promoted or booked, if you will. He beat Finn Balor earlier this year. I mean, and that was pretty clean. If I don't, I think it led to something else. But regardless of that, like it never really went anywhere. And Balor got his win back in the end. So this has been fun. I think Cameron Grimes, who I always really enjoyed in PWG as Trevor Lee in the ring, just, a guy who always just was super athletic and did some crazy stuff. He's showing a different side of himself. So that's cool to see. And it's good that he has a platform like this. And I think he's made the most of it. I don't see him going anywhere, but I don't see him winning this match. I think, which is weird because it's one of those things where I think it's been so one-sided for Lumis in all of the ways. Even though Grimes has gotten the better of him, which led to the strap match with that blindfold match that they had. I think Lumis gets the win here, even though Lumis could easily lose and it wouldn't hurt him at all. But Lumis is my pick.
Yeah, this one, I got to be honest. This is going to be my one when we put our confidence points on our fantasy wrestling league picks, because I don't know. I don't know. Everything you said, I agree with. I've enjoyed Grimes as well. I enjoyed him as Trevor Lee. My first exposure to Trevor Lee was the very first National Pro Wrestling Day. If you remember that back, years ago now, where 10 or 12 different companies put on a match. Each put on a match. There was a Ring of Honor match. That was back in the Scum days, because that was the match the Ring of Honor put in was Karrion and Jacobs against the Briscoes. But Trevor Lee was in a tag match, and I can't tell you now who his partner was, but he went against the Chiba Kid and somebody else who is now Andrew Everett. And so that was my first exposure to both Everett and Trevor Lee, and I was impressed with both that day, and then have become more and more impressed over the years with Trevor Lee as well, or Cameron Grimes now. Dexter Lumis, I think, is an interesting character, and I think has his place. Grimes, I think, has a higher ceiling, though, than Dexter Lumis. I'm trying to remember. So Dexter Lumis won the House of Horrors thing that happened on Halloween Havoc. Remind me how the blindfold match ended.
So Grimes hit the ref while he was blindfolded, and it took the ref out.
That's right.
And somehow, some way, he took off the hood, and then he was still unable. Lumis was still evading him, and it all devolved from there, and it led to the strap being introduced. I'm not recollecting it 100%. So
right. So I feel like Grimes has really never come out on top for the most part in this. Or has struggled to come out on top. So part of me thinks Grimes gets the win here because of that. I wish they would have said whether this is going to be, because WWE has gone both ways on strap chain matches in the past. Is this going to be a pinfall situation, or is this going to be an old school strap match where you drag your opponent to the four corners? If they told us it was going to be that, I would for sure go Cameron Grimes, because I would totally see Grimes doing the old heel trick, and I can see Triple H booking this, where Lumis is dragging him around, and every time Lumis touches a buckle, Grimes hits the buckle right behind him, and then at the last second pulls him, kicks him in the balls, whatever, and hits that fourth turnbuckle. But they've steered away from that in recent years. It seems like strap matches have been more pinfall submission based, partially because you do have to suspend an awful lot of disbelief to believe that, you can incapacitate somebody so far, and after a 15 or 20 minute match, drag a 200 and some odd pound man around to four corners. I get it. There's a physicality reason to that. So, you know what? I got to swing for the fences at this point. Let's be honest. I really can't totally play it safe here, and with 3 shows to go. So I'm going to go Cameron Grimes gets the win here, and have our first difference. I'm not super confident about that at all. If we come back next week and I think, and I lost another match, I won't be totally shocked, because takeovers tend to be babyface a little heavy on, like a lot of pay-per-views on wins. But I'm going to go Grimes. I don't know how. There'll be some sort of chicanery if he gets it, but I'm going to go Cameron Grimes and totally not feel good about myself making that pick.
I support that pick, and I'll eat my words next week if the outcome goes the opposite.
If a miracle happens and I get it right. So the next match that I have absolutely no idea how I'm going to pick as I'm talking is the North American title match. Leon Ruff, the completely underdog, who would have thought this was coming a month ago, champion from Evolve, part of the Skulk with AR Fox. Leon Ruff defends versus both Damian Priest and Johnny Gargano in a triple threat match. Here's my problem. I'm pretty sure Ruff loses the title, because I think you can only do so much with him as a North American champion. He's really undersized. I think he probably has a very good future in the cruiserweight division, but they're not playing him. Well, let me go this way. If Leon Ruff wins, and there's a little bit of me, like about a 1% chance that thinks there's a chance he can, it's because he brings on a manager, Malcolm Bivens, perhaps, and becomes this overconfident, which eventually leads to his downfall down the road. But somehow somebody interferes, and there's something. Maybe there's even more ghost faces, and this time they're for Leon Ruff instead of Gargano, because now we're apparently creating a whole stable of ghost faces at this point. Another problem for another day.
It's 97 all over again. Scream's popular. Sting is back.
We got ghost faces. We got all sorts of things. As long as we don't call them T-Bar and Slapjack, we're going to be okay. See, I got Retribution in, even though we're not talking about him. My problem is I have no idea who wins the title if Ruff loses the title, because I think you have Damian Priest as the former champion, but I think Gargano, Gargano's got the story of he can win the title, but he can't defend it. He's kind of got this Sasha Banks thing going on, which, of course, is what led us to this point anyways. Gargano beats Priest, and then in this first defense, Leon Ruff becomes the champion because Gargano can't ever seem to win that first title. I'm going to go Ghostface interference, and I'm going to go Gargano winning the title. This will probably be my 2, to be perfectly honest, as we do the confidence rankings, just because triple threat matches in general are tough for me to pick sometimes, because there are so many different ways you can go with it reasonably, and still with it, with TV to come, get out of it. If they did go with Leon Ruff getting the win in some way, even if it's not cheating, if it's some, Ghostface interference backfires and Ruff gets a roll-up win or something, at some point that belt is coming off Leon Ruff, and I think it's sooner rather than later. I'm going to go Sunday, and I'm going to go Gargano.
Yeah, so I had the chance to see Leon Ruff a handful of times live in Evolve, and I really enjoyed every time I saw him. But he's not doing the trick for me here. And I don't know that that's because he's undersized or that he's just like the happy-go-lucky, like I made it to this spot, and that just doesn't jive with me in 2020. Not that there's anything wrong with that.
His thing 2 weeks or a week ago on NXT where he was just happy to be there with Kevin Owens, I was like, didn't help him.
He fanboyed out for sure. Well, I want to be clear that I wrote my pick down before you started talking, and I had written Johnny Gargano's name, because even before you had made that pick, my thought was this is Gargano's belt to win back, because I see the chase of Damian Priest going after him for the belt in a singles way, the way that this story continues after Sunday. I may be totally wrong on that. I also wonder when and how and if the ghost faces will actually have more of a payoff than just being people in ghost face costumes. We obviously saw Indy Hartwell for Candace on that end pay off. Will it pay off for Johnny, and if so, who? Obviously, there's a lot of new talent. We talked about that in my half-baked analogy earlier about restaurants or menus.
And I see what you did there with a half-baked analogy about restaurants. But
so Johnny wins the belt here, and I think to your point of which they told a good story here that he can't then defend it after he wins it. This is his third time. So I think third time is the charm, and he's actually able to defend it until he eventually loses it to Damian Priest.
There we are. Well, now we head into, let's call it a double main event, although I expect one of these matches probably to open the show because that seems to be what they've done in the past, although it depends. Can they hang the cage in the Capitol Wrestling Center the way they can in an arena and put it up and down, or do they just have to put it up? In which case, do we get some sort of a backstage thing going on while they're quickly throwing the cage up for War Games? In which case, then I would expect them back to back. But I don't think that's going to happen. I'm sure they'll figure it out.
So to that point, when I finished watching NXT, I was wrestling with where this match is going to happen. And I wondered in my mind if they would do the War Games matches at the Thunderdome. If they did, that means they weren't bringing fans in there. They hadn't been, but they've been bringing fans into NXT, which is in the Capitol Wrestling Center, which is added to the atmosphere. And I feel like these are the two matches where that added atmosphere would be important.
Right.
But who knows? I'm sure they'll figure it out a way at the PC to make it happen. But
right.
That's a big. I'm going to be very intrigued when we get to Sunday to see how this visually and structurally plays out.
Yep. No, I agree. I am very interested to see that as well. Let's go with the women's War Games match first. We did finally get all 4 team members revealed over the last week. Shotzi Blackheart has got teamed up with Ember Moon, Rhea Ripley, and Io Shirai, and they'll be taking on Candice LeRae, Raquel Gonzalez, Dakota Kai, and Toni Storm on the other side. Tom, you have the first pick here.
Yes, I do. First and foremost, I want to say I think both of these matches have been developed and booked and presented really, really well. I actually am really eager to see both of them play out, and I like the issues that are at hand. When I've been thinking about these matches, they're pretty distinctly different, and I say that because I feel like it's more of a grudge for the men, and I feel like it's multiple grudges for the females here. You have, and the interesting component too is you have the women's champion who has vanquished arguably the biggest challenger, who's had just one weird 2020 in Rhea Ripley. And you've got the other 2 people, and probably 3 in this match, that being Ember Moon, Toni Storm, and Candice, who are probably on paper the more relevant challengers. And again, Candice has had her shots, and again, you would think that the ending was at Halloween Havoc, but here we are. Candice and Io are again in the match, and again, they're great in the ring. So it's like your favorite cup of soup. You're going to have that cup of soup every time you can because it's delicious. I'll take that here too. My wondering in this match is, are they going to use it to pay off a grudge, and that grudge being Candice destroyed Shotzi's tank, which we've been seeing behind the scenes, not visually, but just images that it's being rebuilt. Is that just her coming to the ring with her team, or is there more to that story? And is that the fuel that Shotzi needs to be and captain her team to a win? Or does this match get used as a vehicle to determine Io Shirai's next challenger? I lean towards the latter, which would make me think that I would pick Team Candice, but I'm not confident about that. I'm torn. I'm really torn, and I could see a number of singles matches coming out of this after this match happens, but I'm going to stick with I think is my gut, and I'm going to say that Team Candice gets the win, with the intent that someone, probably Toni Storm, sets herself up as the next challenger for Io Shirai.
NXT does a nice job of setting up matches in a way that you and I can have these back and forth conversations and be torn about the winners. And I like that because sometimes, well, they've told an interesting story out of it. When you book Roman Reigns versus Jey Uso, Roman Reigns winning that match. If they booked, well, I'll just use this match for example. If they booked Io Shirai defending her title against Kacy Catanzaro, Io Shirai's winning that match. We know that. I was going to say Xia Li, but they're doing something there. I'm not 100% sure I know what they're doing, but I'm intrigued by the whole Xia Li and Boa thing. Another story, different day. I've said that a number of times on this podcast. Everything you said again makes so much sense to me, Tom. Shotzi has the revenge factor. Yeah, she seems to be rebuilding a tank. Or are there 4 tanks? Are they all going to come down on tanks? We'll see. Although when they unveiled something and it shined, I was a little bit like, what is that? That was a little weird in the vignette.
Wasn't it the engine too?
It seemed that way, right?
I thought yeah, okay.
Yeah, it seemed that way. I mean, is it the Undertaker's urn? Has he passed on his powers to Shotzi Blackheart? I don't know. But yet, I also look and I don't think you should beat Toni Storm right away. She's just turned heel. I think you got to build her as a heel. Raquel Gonzalez could potentially take the loss because I think of the 8 women in this match, she's probably the 8th as far as where she's at. But I think Raquel Gonzalez has come along very well. At first, I was like, oh, I don't really like this girl. But I think she's come along pretty well. Her matches have been pretty good. Her match with Io Shirai, not with Io Shirai, with Shotzi on Wednesday was good. Her match with Rhea Ripley was good at at Halloween Havoc. I keep wanting to make Halloween Havoc a takeover, and it wasn't. It was takeover-esque, but it wasn't a takeover. I think Gonzalez has come along well, so I think she's clearly your powerhouse in the women's division. So I don't know that I want to, that I think you should beat her either if the babyface team wins. Dakota Kai can always take a loss. LeRae can take a loss. Either one of those I don't think get hurt by it. But I'm in the same vein as you. I think this helps set them up for who is that next challenger, helps sort out who is the next challenger. If the babyface team wins, I think you sort it out to Ember Moon, and Ember says, hey, we won. Now how about a title shot? Or something along those lines. But I think it's going to flip the other direction. I'm with you. I think Candice LeRae's team wins. I think either Candice LeRae or Toni Storm get the win. Probably pinning Io Shirai, so that there's that. Oh, she pinned the women's champion, or made her tap, which probably would be a pin in this case. Although, please go back to War Games being submit or surrender. Please, can we do that? The old school guy in me wants that back. I think this is going to be great, though. I like all 8 women in this match. I think all 8 of them have talent. Like I said, I think Gonzalez has come along. I think there's going to be some sort of power spot where she's just going to wreck somebody into a table or a cage or something. And she's going to look like $1 million doing it. I think Shotzi's going to bump all over God's green earth for people, probably for Raquel, because that's kind of what Shotzi does. It's clear that they are high on Shotzi Blackheart. So I think that'll be interesting too, to see where does she go from this too. But I am going to go with Candice LeRae and her team winning this match to set up that next. I wish I wasn't, but it did. Which means then we move into the other half of the double main event. I kind of think this will close the show, but I wouldn't be shocked if the women close the show. You and I talked about this a little bit before. But just the way they've built this, I think this is going to close the show. At the Undisputed Era, Adam Cole, Bobby Fish, Roderick Strong, and Kyle O'Reilly versus the still not officially named maybe Kings, Pat McAfee, Danny Burch, Oney Lorcan, and Pete Dunne. I love it. I can go either way again. Here we go. So you have the Undisputed Era, who have they won every War Games they've been in?
I'd have to look back to. I don't think so. I think last year didn't Kevin Owens' team win? Wasn't he like the?
Yeah, they did. That's true. They did. But they've been in, I think, every War Games match that the men have had in NXT. You have Pat McAfee, who looked good in his debut, versus Adam Cole. You have Burch and Lorcan, who have gotten their first prolonged exposure near the top anyways, and are the NXT champions. And you have Pete Dunne, who is just a butt kicker, of the nth degree. I love that he finally spoke on Sunday too, or on Wednesday too. He's had this time where he's just been totally silent and looking at Pat McAfee, kind of like he wants to kill Pat McAfee most of the time. And then he, spoke, and I love that McAfee even called that out. Like, he never talks. Look, he even said something. McAfee's a heel magnet, or a heat magnet, I should say. That guy just he talks and you want to see him get his rear end kicked. I mean, it's just the perfect pro wrestling heel. I mean, he really has that. So kudos to him, and kudos to NXT for using him well. The Undisputed Era has been.
I'm sorry. I wanted to share the history, which may or may not influence your pick, but I think it's only fair because if I can see it, you should also know too.
Sure.
So, 2017, first NXT War Games, Undisputed Era of Cole, Fish, and O'Reilly defeated Sanity and the Authors of Pain and Roddy. Roderick Strong was not yet with the Undisputed Era. So they're 1-0 there. War Games 2018, they lost as the foursome that they are now to Pete Dunne, Ricochet, and the War Raiders. So they're 1-1. And then last year, 2019, the same foursome were together, and they lost to Team Ciampa of Tommaso Ciampa, Keith Lee, a guy named Dominic Dijakovic. You may remember him, and Kevin Owens.
Yeah, I haven't seen him in a while. Wonder if he's at the bar.
So Undisputed Era is currently 1-2 in
1-2 in War Games. Okay, look at me trying to say they've won them all, and they don't even have a winning record. So part of a little piece of my Candice LeRae pick is that I think the heels win one War Games, and I think the baby faces win the other. And I could go either direction. Like, I could be wrong on both of these picks, and I wouldn't be totally shocked. None of these. Honestly, it's going to be hard for me. I'll probably put my, we talk about these confidence points with our fantasy wrestling league. I'll probably put my 5 on Ciampa, and then, I could make an argument after that, because I'm just not sure on the rest of these, and I'm not even 100% sold on the Ciampa pick either. But I'm more confident in that one than the other picks. I think the Undisputed Era is going to win this. I think the way that it's been set up, they've done a really nice job of setting it up. They've done a really nice job of establishing McAfee's group as a powerhouse group and something to be reckoned with. Adam Cole, dead. Bobby Fish, dead. Everybody dead. Pat McAfee's thing. I think McAfee takes the loss here. I think you protect your tag champs. I think you protect Pete Dunne, because I think Pete Dunne has a future potentially even as an NXT champion. I think he was the longest reigning UK champion for a long time. I don't know if Walter's beaten that record yet. I don't think he has. But let's put an asterisk by that, because Walter didn't work for like 6 months either, because of the pandemic. So hard to tell what they would have done with that title. But I think the Undisputed Era win here, which I'm a little back and forth, because Cole did win that one-on-one match with Pat McAfee. So part of me thinks, well, maybe McAfee gets a tainted win here and we go to round 3 somewhere down the road. But I'm still not sure that Undisputed Era is long for this world in NXT. I think there's a real possibility they could be moved. And if that's the case, I could see them winning here. Again, beating McAfee, not the tag champs or Pete Dunne. I think I could see them winning here, not as their swan song, but as part of that, and giving them, since they have lost their last 2 War Games, giving them a chance to avenge that with this win now as baby faces. So I'm going to go Undisputed Era. And again, much like most of my picks in this, I could be like down 9. No, I can't, because we've been the same on most of these picks. But
and we'll stay the same here, because Undisputed Era is my pick too. I do have a cloud of doubt in terms of the potential involvement of Finn Balor if they were to go that route. I don't want them to, unless they add a 5th guy to Team McAfee, but I don't know who that would be. Darn shame about Ridge Holland, because I imagine that Finn Balor and the UE versus Ridge Holland and McAfee's crew makes a lot of sense, and maybe that was the direction they were going. Maybe it wasn't either. Who knows? And nothing against Bobby Fish, but I think Bobby Fish is the guy you easily replace with a Finn Balor if an attack were to happen. Two thoughts come to mind for me here. I do see the McAfee character, be it only a mouthpiece or be it maybe in a ring, not being done here. We both saw that when he fought Cole earlier this year. We're like, wow, that talent is there. Like he's got it. So again, I don't see it being a full-time thing yet for him because he's got his hands in a lot of different buckets. But you could easily keep him around, and I think that makes a lot of sense. I think he's someone you want to see, like you said, get punched in the mouth, tune in to see get his butt kicked. The other part of this is I also agree with you that Pete Dunne is a really logical choice to be the next challenger for the NXT title. And I would love to see that match against Finn Balor. I also would love to see Kyle O'Reilly get back in the mix too, but we can stretch that out. And with the beating they gave one another when Balor retained, that's okay. Those guys got to dial it down next time for their own safety and wellness. So with all of those moving parts, how do you? I don't know if I even said my pick yet, so I apologize. My pick is UE. I also agree that I think that they get the win. Is it their swan song? I don't know, but I think they, as the baby faces, need to overcome the bad guys here. And there's been a number of things. The one thing that wasn't clear to me, and I wonder if gets revealed on Sunday, even though I have a hunch that it was McAfee, even though they said he wasn't there, who interfered in the ladder match? Who was the guy that caused Kyle O'Reilly to hit that big tumble and allow Pete to ascend and get the man advantage? Again, it seems like it was McAfee, but they never paid it off. So will they pay that off on Sunday? And does that become
right? There was a lot of the promo on Wednesday. I thought was a lot of like wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Oh, it wasn't you? Oh no, you weren't there. Oh, so maybe that's all they ever do. But yeah, I think could it be somebody else?
Yeah. So again, we're picking the match based on it being a 4-on-4 and based on it being the guys that are on the table today. UE's my pick. It'll be interesting to see. It'll give us a lot to talk about if we get other players at the table. But I can't wait. It's gonna be a fantastic match. The one guy I think that you had to protect is Pete Dunne. I don't think you have to protect Oni or Danny, unfortunately. But that's just my opinion.
And the only reason I would protect Oni and Danny is because they're the tag champs. If they weren't, yeah, fine. But I agree, Dunn is higher on the protection list. The one thing I think is interesting, and again, I'd have to go back and look. I don't remember last year with the two War Games matches. Traditionally in War Games matches, the heels have the advantage. They, Arn Anderson was always the first one in the ring, in the old school War Games matches, and the Horsemen always had the advantage. Which just makes sense. The baby faces have to come from underneath. They've always got the one man down. So I did think it was interesting. I expected Shotzi to win that ladder match on Wednesday night, but I think it'll be interesting to see what it looks like with the baby faces having the 2-on-1 advantage and the 3-on-2 and the 4-on-3 in the women's match. I'd have to go back and look and see. The baby faces might have had the advantage last year, but then you had Dakota Turn in the women's match, so it didn't actually matter. So they were still at a disadvantage, even though they had the quote advantage. I think that's how it played out.
And one thing that just came to mind is just and maybe I'm reaching here. Could Rhea just walk out? Could Rhea, like, she's committed, right? But like, could the door open and she just leaves? She doesn't, and I mean, just what a way of disrespect to just leave your comrades that you've committed to, but then you blindside them in the end. You don't do it physically, because again, I think you and I both agree. Who knows when, but she's got to get to Raw or SmackDown.
Yeah, and for some reason, I think SmackDown. I just that feels right to me. Partially because, although this might be all of the reason to do it, Charlotte Flair got drafted to Raw, which they could totally forget about if they want to. By the time Charlotte comes back, whenever that is. But I expect here after the first of the year, probably to see Charlotte back. It'll be Royal Rumble and WrestleMania time, so Charlotte's coming. And let's keep her away from Charlotte for a little while. That's my opinion. And I think Charlotte got drafted to Raw. That seems right to me.
You're right. Yep.
Okay. I was gonna say, it's pretty sure it was Raw. So little things there. I feel like there was one other thing I wanted to say about this show, and I'll be darned if I can think of what it is now. I think this is the last big show for NXT this year. I think NXT, like everybody, has had a as good of a year as they can, given the conditions that they've had to work in since March. And I'm excited for this show. I think it'll be a good show. I'm looking forward to it. The work should be superb. There's nothing on here that makes me, other than, I'm ready for Grimes and Loomis to move on to other things. But there's nothing on the show that makes me go, oh, well, all right, I can make some popcorn that match, or go grab my pretzels or whatever. Everything here I want to see at some level. Grimes, if nothing else, let's listen to him yell "to the moon" all the time. And, he's a character. There's no question. He's a character. So just to recap our picks, we are the same on 4 out of the 5. We have the same. We both picked Ciampa. We both picked Johnny Gargano. Both picked Candice LeRae's team and the Undisputed Era team. And we differ on that strap match. I went Cameron Grimes. Tom went Dexter Loomis. Tune in next week to hear Tom take a 6-match lead in our head-to-head competition. Oh, final battle is going to be whatever he didn't say.
Even though I picked Loomis, if Grimes doesn't win, I'm going to come on next week and say my number one big thing is that I went to the moon.
There you go. Right. Yeah. This is getting out of hand a little bit here for the head-to-head, but it's all right. We'll still keep going. And I do think Final Battle, for instance, will be interesting because, as you and I have talked about a little bit, how much stock do we put into, okay, the title holders are back, but are they just back for the one show? Some of them have contracts that are coming up. Some of them live out of the country. And how are they going to be able to be here regularly? Coincidentally, totally off topic here, we'll just wrap it up with a piece of breaking news. They have announced the 6-man tag team title match for Final Battle this morning while we were on recording here. Mexa Blood of Bandito, Flamita, and Ray Horace will take on Shane Taylor Promotions of Shane Taylor, Moses, and Khan. I just put a waiver claim in for Moses because that tells you where I think that match might be going. So you already have Shane Taylor. I got to try to block you on some points. So
we're close. We're like 9 points apart right now. Are we not?
We are. And don't think that David Finley pickup of mine wasn't a total keep me with you move. Which, without going into New Japan too much, I really thought FinJuice had a chance to win that whole thing. And boy, reading the results, they have not. It's not gone the way I thought in the World Tag League. So
I plan to watch. Isn't the final next Friday?
I think so. Yes.
Okay. I think I'm gonna try to watch that shortly after it airs live. I'm not gonna get up for it, but I have the day off, so.
That one is going to have English commentary live. I saw that the last night of the league matches and then the finals on the 11th will have live English commentary. So that's fun. Yeah. I haven't paid enough. I've paid enough attention to see the results. Just thought, boy, I thought I'd get a few more points out of David Finley.
Yeah, and that's and again too. Like again, we were very much, both of us, for multiple reasons, super all in on G1, and rightfully so. And we have completely gone the utter opposite direction on both Best of Super Juniors and World Tag League. So much so to the point, like I looked at I got caught up because I finally just said, you know what, you're not going to start watching it. At least find out what's happening. A week ago, or roughly a week ago, and I still don't know where things are. No, granted, the things that happened this week I know, but I couldn't tell you who's what's left, who's right, up, down, purple.
Xavier Woods, up, down, up. Gear of War, or Gear of War?
Wars of Gear.
Wars of Gear.
No, Gear of War. Gears of War.
Right. Whatever that game is that they came out to play.
I said that intentionally backwards.
Yeah, thanks. That helped a lot. That doesn't count as a loss in head-to-head. These head-to-head competitions, Tom, right now, it kind of feels like when you're watching a football game and a team goes up like 40 in the first half, and there's the joke on Twitter about, hey, I just saw, the Chiefs just scored again. 3 days later, they're like, hey, Mahomes threw another touchdown. That's how this feels in head-to-head. But anyways. All right. Well, we've just bantered enough here at the end that has absolutely nothing to do with anything we've talked about the other 90 minutes of this podcast. But thank you all for listening. Thank you all. If you have a chance, subscribe, rate, review, do all that fun stuff. It helps us in the algorithms so that we show up when people search pro wrestling podcasts. We know we're not the biggest dog out there. We may not even be a dog in the fight. But we do this because we love to do it, and we appreciate anybody who gives us their time and gives us a listen. Send us an email to spotmonkeys@gmail.com. Interact with us on Twitter or on Facebook, or the Book of Faces, as my friend Jeff over at the Fully Posable podcast says. Check it out. And I look forward to conversing with you next week, Tom. We'll be talking about TakeOver and maybe some things. We won't have a head-to-head next week because we'll have a double head-to-head the week after for full battle. Yes. Final battle and TLC, but I'm sure we'll have plenty to talk about. We'll be recording late in the week, so we'll also maybe be able to update on Sting and Omega and things around that too. Yeah.
Tables, finals, and battles. I can't wait.
Tables, finals, and battles. Can't wait. It's going to be a big thing. I should say before we go, one last thing. This weekend is a huge rematch in the NFL between my Chicago Bears, who fell into a win against Tom's Detroit Lions in week 1 by no fault of their own and all fault of DeAndre Swift. But big rematch for two teams going absolutely nowhere. Tom's team has already fired their head coach. My team shouldn't be too far behind. We'll probably wait till the end of the season because that's just what the Bears do. It's kind of the toilet bowl of the NFC North, but it'll be fun to watch if nothing else, Tom, because I don't know. Will it be fun?
I will tell you this. I did not watch the entire Thanksgiving Day game. That is how disgusted I was as a Detroit Lions fan. So never do I want to celebrate the fact that someone has been fired. But I also believe that if you do not perform, you're subject to losing your job. So the right move was made in Detroit in that space.
I would agree with you. And I think the right move will be made in Chicago too, unless they really right the ship. And I've seen no signs that is coming. This is not going to be the stellar game of the year. But amazingly, somehow here in Nebraska, I'm getting the Bears and the Lions on Sunday. So,
well, I'm happy for you. At least one of us will watch. I'm just kidding. I'll watch.
Right. We'll see. Anyways, not a football podcast. Well, I'm sure one of us will have a little bit of good-natured ribbing to give the other next week. Even as tough as that seems when it doesn't seem very right. But anyways, folks, everybody be safe. If you haven't turned off this podcast by now, you really do love us. All right, everybody be safe, stay healthy, and have a great week. And we will talk to you again next week. Take care, everybody.